Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady. My name is Robin Salvin, she, her pronouns, please, and I am serving as worship associate today alongside the Reverend Wendy Bartell. Please use Wendy's name in lieu of pronouns as we explore living stories over time.
On the morning of September 11th, 2001, I was living in San Diego. It was a beautiful, sunny morning. My roommate, Michael, was already awake and doing his workout. I was lingering in bed, easing into the day. The phone rang. It was my mother. My mother never called me from Massachusetts to California in the morning. I knew something must be wrong. She was rather urgently telling me to turn on the news. So we did. I remember sinking to the floor with the phone still to my ear as I saw the tower burning. And soon after, a second plane crashing into the next tower. I was over 2,700 miles away, but I felt like it was happening where I lived because I was already a Unitarian Universalist, already recognized our interdependence. Many of us were profoundly affected by the events of that day, a shared traumatic experience joining us together. To bear witness has impact on our living stories. Unitarian Universalist musician Sarah Dan Jones, hearing the drum beats of war that followed that day, wrote as an antidote, "When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love," and wrote a whole song dedicated to that. It was since rearranged for our hymnal. And no matter what time we are in and what we're facing, breathing in peace or breathing out love or breathing in the word that you chose and breathing out the word that you chose has a place to help us ground in our own witness to the unfolding living stories in and around us. I'm guessing that when you hear the number 2001 or you hear September 11th, that it's the first thing that pops into your head, or many of us, at least those of us who were alive and knew what was happening that day. There were other terrible things that year: deadly earthquakes, Ebola outbreaks. Foot and mouth meant the slaughter of over 6 million cows and goats in Britain. Hurricanes and tropical storms, armed conflicts, Enron's fraud. There were also some interesting technological developments. The iPod and iTunes were launched in 2001. So was the Xbox by Microsoft, along with Nintendo's Game Boy Advance and GameCube. The Survivor album was released by Destiny's Child and was one of the top sellers of the year. The highest grossing films included The Fellowship of the Ring from the Lord of the Rings series and Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or the Sorcerer's Stone as it was called in the US, Shrek, and Monsters, Inc. Then, of course, there are the personal memories that many of us have from our own living stories: birthdays, anniversaries, trips, promotions, friendships, adventures, accomplishments, disappointments, losses, deaths, missed opportunities, mistakes, growth, learning, change. Earlier that year, I had traveled to England, Ireland, and Italy for the first time. I loved traveling in the London Underground, minding the gap, and the countryside to Venice by train, and the total adventure and romance of it. I was in a crossover folk band at the time, and I was running my own music therapy practice and teaching studio, living and loving my life and my church for the most part. As Charles Dickens in his book A Tale of Two Cities wrote, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. If you are old enough to have been alive in 2001, what do you remember about that year? How are you the same? How are you different? One way that I'm the same, or at least similar, is I still like to play with different hairstyles, lengths, shapes, hair product. And one way I'm different is that I also used to play with color and shaved designs, and I haven't done that in a long time. Now, that might sound superficial, especially in light of the other things that we're naming, but for some people, it would be superficial, but not for some of us. In San Diego, particularly in the Hillcrest neighborhood, there were lots of LGBTQ plus friendly businesses, including barbershops and hairdressers. I've had flat tops and crew cuts. I've had spiky hair. I've had faux hawks. I've had peace signs and pride flags and hearts and a piano keyboard and even a Christmas tree shaved into my hair. I've had blonde highlights. I've had Billy Idol-like complete platinum blonde spiky hair. I've had orange and brown tiger stripes. Life is short. Have fun with your hair. Am I right?
Yeah.
I know not all of us have hair to have fun with anymore. You can have fun in other ways. Some of you have hair elsewhere. And some of us lose our hair, right? For all kinds of reasons. It was rare in San Diego for someone to balk at a request I had for my hair there. I cannot say the same for my experience here. Even for just what most would consider a regular haircut. And that has impacted my creative expression and playfulness, and I have sometimes let those experiences dim my joy, discourage me enough to live smaller for other people's comfort. It is sometimes exhausting to deal with the very real transphobia, sexism, and cluelessness in our society. What if the parts of our faces were rearranged, or if they were different shapes? Would we still know each other, we heard in the story of For All Ages earlier? What are the explicit and subtle messages we give one another about how we should be? My hair isn't actually the most important part of this story. It's about the importance of bearing witness to one another that I want to lift up. We are living in incredibly difficult and dangerous times. The amount of corruption and harm that this administration is engaging in, all at the expense of the rest of us, is alarming and terrifying at times. If we were not seeing the horrendous acts or hearing about the horrendous acts happening in Minnesota by the federal agencies over the last several months, we might not have believed it. But we believe it because of the stories we know, as well as the stories that we can now imagine, because so much terrible stuff has happened to damage our country, our reputation, our democracy, our credibility, our actual lives, however indirectly at the moment. And while we might want to avoid it, we need to muster our courage, exhausted as we may sometimes be of all the nonsense. And in that courage, continue to bear witness to life's unfolding, to be aware of what it has to teach us about ourselves and one another. That doesn't mean all the time. Please still temper your scrolling. Please be mindful about how much news and headlines you are consuming. Give yourself time to re-regulate after you have. But don't turn away entirely either. Don't leave people alone to fight for our lives. Yesterday, our neighbor was getting their roof replaced. Every single one of the workers was a person of color. And a couple of times as I was working on this service, I noticed outside the window a black truck driven by a white guy go slowly by, looking at the house. No, he might just need a new roof, or be a roofer, or was just curious about what was going on, or any number of other possible stories. In my head, I was preparing mentally to go outside and demand a judicial warrant if anyone showed up to detain anyone. Prepared, not paranoid. Prepared. As we said throughout the COVID shutdown, we use that phrase a lot then. It's important for us to know our rights and to not turn away. It was loud most of the day. The roof looks great, and everyone left without incident. I hope they all got home safely. We need to live life large, as my friend and former roommate Michael often says still. Live life large, because corrupt power wants us to look away, to be polite, to not interrupt, to be small and go about our lives, to fight amongst ourselves. We need to be bigger than that and be willing to live into our values of equity and justice with love at the center. And that requires action. Breathing in peace and breathing out love is action. So is putting ourselves in between harm and someone who needs protecting. We need not let others steal our joy. And instead, as we sang at the beginning of our service, we can rise and greet the day and sing a song of gladness, because it is good to be alive. We honor the journeys and choices that several families made to become part of UU Schenectady in 2001, and we also honor the journeys and choices that other families made to become part of UU Schenectady in 1976 too, and of course those before and after and in between. There are still important stories to hear. There are still important stories to tell. There are still important stories to write. In 1976, two of the top-selling books were Gail Sheehy's Passages, Predictable Crises in Adult Life, and Roots, The Saga of an American Family by Alex Haley. These two people wrote books to help us live larger, more aware, awakened to the suffering and the realities of being human. Sheehy's journalistic approach to studying the passages of Sheehy's journalistic approach to studying the passages of life, particularly for women, because of course, up to that point, only male researchers were studying men, and even those were very few, and they were only studying men like themselves, Harvard and Yale white academic types. Sheehy said, "Don't you find that peculiar? There are all kinds of other people out here." And so studies were expanded because she had the bother to ask the question. And Haley wrote the heartrending stories of a young man named Kunta Kinte who was abducted at 16 while cutting wood to make a drum, and he is humiliated and stolen from the Gambia, shipped across the ocean and sold into slavery in the U.S. And while there has been significant consternation about historical accuracy or methodology that Haley used to do his research, the book and the TV series had huge impact on people's understanding of the cruelties of slavery and increased interest in genealogy, particularly for African Americans, many of whom had assumed their ancestry would be untraceable, and began more concerted efforts to learn about heritage and lineage. Both of these authors and their books helpful, needed, bestsellers, and also imperfect. In 1976, the country was celebrating the bicentennial. I was pretty young then, but I do remember receiving a special collectible bicentennial quarter with a drummer on the back. And my father taking me, I think probably to Lowell, I was living in Massachusetts at the time, to listen to music and watch the fireworks on the 4th. That was the text exchange we had yesterday. Was it Lowell? Where was it? Do we remember? We think Lowell. For those of us who were alive in 1976, what do you remember? How are you the same? How are you different? I still get excited when I find a new quarter, though I've been slacking in recent years using less cash. and I was already learning to read music and appreciate music. I still love music, love making music, love listening to live music, love sculpting experiences of music that move people, inspire us to justice and peacemaking, that brings healing, or simply and profoundly allows us to be immersed in joy. I'm different in that I was unaware then of the harms our country could perpetrate, but I am aware now. Gail Sheehy's work helped demystify the life passages that so many adults face as we age. She helped people give voice, give language to the thing we sometimes call midlife crisis, inviting us to see the challenges and the opportunities that we face throughout our lives. Have you ever stopped and really looked at a face? Our story asked us earlier. We often think about being honest with ourselves and others as hard work, that we need to risk being vulnerable, and that can be uncomfortable. And it can most definitely be hard to be our true selves sometimes. Many of us want to be known, to be understood, to be valued. But we also don't want to be a burden. We want to help and we want to make a difference. But many of us don't like asking for help when we need it. We want to live with integrity and joy and real connection, and can sometimes find ourselves afraid of being judged or getting hurt or being rejected. Someone might find out our secrets by looking at our faces. Another reference to our story this morning. Mark Nepo is a poet and philosopher whose life journey has been impacted by a rare form of lymphoma. In his description in the book Reduced to Joy, he is described as a student of all paths. His work explores the common center and unity of all spiritual traditions, it says, focusing on how we can experience that unity when we can lean into life and hold nothing back. Ultimately, he encourages us to live wholeheartedly so we can inhabit the gifts we are born with and find the language of our own wisdom. Yesterday, when I first typed that last sentence, I typed luggage instead of language. And I got a chuckle out of it too. We do tend to carry around some baggage sometimes, stuff that maybe doesn't always serve us in the present. The poems of Mark Nepo have some wisdom to share with us. Nepo's poem, Animal Being, goes like this. Because we dream and want and carry on, we think we're exempt. We think we're above working the earth on all fours. We often miss the point. A bear may feel like a hummingbird the moment he catches a salmon, but his paws are still paws. As for me, I feel like a horse chasing birds that cross the sky. When they fly out of view, I know I'm a hawk born as a horse. All poets are. A tangle of wings and hooves, trying to run in the sky and fly on earth. So it's useless to pine for your lover to be delicate if she's really a cheetah, or for your mother to see clearly if her path is that of a bat. It doesn't mean we can't try, just that we work with what we're given. Exactly. Bearing witness is not always easy. And this poem, called The Thing About Fear, goes like this. We try to avoid it, distract ourselves, even put others in the way, because it makes what is necessary seem monumental. It makes what is needed seem uncrossable. Yet when we stumble over the line, or are loved over the line, or in our exhaustion fall beyond our pain, what we feared was a fall to our death turns out to have been the next step. So well timed, River. Facing our fear has something to teach us. Or his poem, Discernment. The trouble with the mind is that it seems like a bird, but walks like a man, and things at the surface move fast, needing to be gathered, while things at the center move slow, needing to be perceived. What I mean is, if you want to see the many birds, you can gather them in a cage and wonder why they won't fly. Or you can go to the wetlands, birding in silence before the sun comes up. It's the same with the things we love or think. We can frame them in pretty cages, or follow them into the wild meadow till they stun us with the spread of their magnificent wings. What do you need right now that would support you going to the wild meadow of your heart's desire? What would help you spread your magnificent wings? What holds you back? Or what causes you to act in ways that try to hold others back? Why? Isn't life what we're here for? To live fully and well? No matter what our memories hold or the judgments we've endured, the heartbreaks and failures often turn out to be crucibles, leading us through the fire of transformation. The flames that burn away that which no longer serves us, self doubt, casting aspersions, living smaller for others' comfort. The hummingbird, though small, does not hide their shimmering ruby throat, nor does the eagle pretend that they cannot fly and fish and soar again, majestic over the mountain lake. We too are meant to shimmer and soar, and also to reflect others' beauty, amplify one another's precious gifts. Listen closely and well to these living stories, knowing the legacies of our ancestors are not always the stories to tell, yet often the stories from which to learn, to grow, to live better, to quell our fear, and shine bright like the sun. Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Don't let anyone ever tell you that you are anything less than beautiful. Instead, let us find the language of our own wisdom with our commitment to one another, to this congregation, and to our shared faith. Everything is possible. With the poems and songs, meditations and prayers, let us imagine a better world into being and live stories worth telling, that our living legacy honors our ancestors and our descendants. May the light of hope, peace, and love here shine upon each face. May they bring faith and poetry to guide our journey home. Amen, and blessed be.